Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well. I have decided today to make a video about different ways to use your tarot cards that are a little bit more non-traditional and that maybe beginners don't even know about. I'm sure that a lot of you guys think of divination, of fortune telling when you hear tarot, and all of those are good things you can do with the tarot deck, but I've got a few suggestions what else you can do. So let's delve right into it with number one. This is an easy one. It goes into the same vein as divination. So instead of foreseeing the future, a lot of the time what tarot means to people is a means of self-exploration. So diving into your psyche with the help of archetypes such as the mother, the father, the hermit, the sage old man, the magician, the king, the queen. All of these archetypes can help us understand our own psyche better. Tarot can be a way to communicate with your subconscious in a way that you usually wouldn't be able to do unless you meditate. And it's basically a language that you give your subconsciousness in order to communicate with you and be inspired by the cards. So this is the first way to use them, which is a fairly obvious one. The second way is to discover hidden options or hidden power sources that you just hadn't thought of yourself. That's also a fairly obvious one. We're going to get to some more interesting points in a second, I swear. So yeah, tapping into depths of energy that you didn't even know maybe that you have inside of you. That's what you can use tarot for as well. Then now it gets a bit more interesting, a little bit more non-traditional, I guess. Another way you can use tarot is for inspiration when you start a new project, whether it's a book, a business venture, anything out there, or just a project that you're starting for your company. You can use the tarot cards to get a starting point. They can tell you not necessarily how it's going to end or how it's going to go. Of course, you can use them like that too, but it's also very valid to just sit down and think about what you actually want out of the project, what you want to achieve. So for example, if you're writing a book, you could use the tarot cards in order to find a starting point for your plot, or what your climax will be, or what your characters are, or if you already have the characters, you could figure out how they would react to a certain thing that you want to happen in the book. So to keep it realistic, you want to kind of examine how that character, that archetype would react. And tarot cards can help you immensely in that if you know a lot about them. And even if you don't know a lot about them, let's be honest, you can just be inspired by the pretty pictures. So yeah, there's a million ways to use tarot cards to kickstart a project and to get a firmer grip on what you actually expect and want out of a project and how it's going to go. Whether it's creatively or a business venture, tarot can inspire you, definitely. Another way to use tarot is to use the cards as meditation guides. For example, you could say, you know that you have a very important job interview coming up, and you know that you have to be assertive, and that's not exactly your strong suit. So maybe you want to channel your inner emperor. So you take the emperor card and you meditate on it. You could even path work with it, which means that you, in your mind, step into the card, have a conversation with the emperor. But even if you just have 5 minutes in the morning, just take the time, look at the card, think about how he would do this or how the emperor would do this today. So it's a good way to tap into that archetypical energy of some of these cards. Of course, that doesn't mean that if you want to embody the sage aspect of the hermit, that if you start to try and channel him, you automatically become withdrawn or just want to stay home. That's not what this is about. You can decide which parts of the archetypes you want to take upon yourself and which ones you don't need right now or don't want right now. So it's basically just an inspiration. What could bring you further in your day and what energy would help you get through the day and perform as best as you can. Another good way to use tarot is to use it as a mnemonic device. Mnemonic devices are aspects that you use in order to remember something better. For example, if you have an important public speech coming up or a presentation at work or in school, you can use tarot in order to remember the key points of your speech. So let's say your speech is separated into 5 parts roughly. You could either draw 5 cards or just take the most fitting cards out of your tarot deck, lay them out, and practice the speech while looking at these cards, and kind of also at the same time create a story around those cards. A story that you can follow when you're in the speech. So that story doesn't even need to be related to the speech. It will just be playing out in your head and help you remember certain things. For example, if you go on a walk, you first see a tree with a man hanging on it. And that reminds you of the first part of your speech. Then you keep walking and you see a king and a queen dining together in the middle of the forest. That will be the second part of your speech. And then you keep going and you encounter 3 cups that are just standing around, or people partying with 3 cups, which I guess is more in the vibe of the 3 cups. I don't know. So each part of your journey in this tarot pathway, if you want to call that, will be a part of your speech. So use it as a mnemonic device. It's great. This part of how to use the cards will need a little introduction. A friend of mine recently ordered a tarot deck from overseas, and unfortunately some of the cards were damaged. The company that sent the cards to her is replacing all of the damaged cards. I think it's around 20 cards or so, which means that she doesn't have to send the damaged cards back. So she just ends up with having 20 cards that she doesn't really need. All of the damaged cards will be replaced by new ones after all. So one thing you could do with that is use it for decorative purposes. You could hang them on the wall. You can use them as bookmarks. You can use them for collages, for example. The same applies if you have a deck that you really love, that is very old, however, and kind of damaged, and you just get a new version. And you can use all of the old cards, as decoration, for example. Or what could, of course, also be the case is that you just cannot bond with a deck. You don't really want to let go of it. You don't want to give it to anyone else. You don't want to sell it. But you're also just not connecting right and you don't like using it. In that case, first of all, I do always recommend really try to get into the deck, work with it. But if everything fails, use it as decoration. It's probably pretty. Otherwise, you wouldn't have bought it. So yeah, that's another way to use tarot. The last way to use tarot, which is one of the most appealing ones for a lot of people, I think, that maybe get into it because of fortune telling, but then realize there's a whole other level to it, is tarot is an entrance or an entryway into all sorts of wisdom teachings. Wisdom teachings reach from astrology to symbolism in general, occultism if you're into that, alchemy, numerology, everything. If you want to learn more about these concepts that people in former times had and maybe want to adapt your mind to them, kind of try them on for size, tarot is a very good way because it's anything but a dry way to learn things. It's not boring at all. So every card kind of gets you closer, even Eastern philosophies, every card gets you closer to understanding the patterns that connect all of these wisdom teachings with each other. So it's a good way to kind of, get a little insight into all of these instead of just sitting down and learning astrology or sitting down and learning numerology by learning all the numbers by heart. I feel like tarot is a very organic way because it's connected to so many of these wisdom teachings. It's a very organic way to learn and to take a first step into this direction. One last thing that I want to say is that in exploring the tarot and in using the tarot, don't feel like there's any sort of taboo to it. Don't feel like anything is too silly to try out with your deck. I understand that sometimes it will seem strange to use tarot as an icebreaker at a team event or something like that because you feel like you're giving too much of yourself to your coworkers, but definitely don't hesitate to do these things because you feel like tarot is something very sacred or so monumental that you cannot play with it. Tarot used to be playing cards, and that's still at the heart of the whole thing, that in a playful way and in an inspiring way, you gain knowledge about yourself, about the world, about philosophy. That's all it is. And there's no rule catalog that tells you what to do and what not to do with your deck. It's all about what you feel like you are allowed to do, like you want to do, and what will bring you further on your journey, basically. So don't be afraid to try things. Don't be afraid to take one card out of the deck, put it on your desk for a week. I mean, unless you want to use the cards. Don't be afraid of that. And don't be limited also by the authors of the books. The tarot deck itself is larger than its author. It's bigger than the sum of its parts, and it's definitely bigger than the person who created it. Whether it was the person who wrote the companion book, the person who did the art, the person who designed the cards and came up with the idea first. So don't be afraid to make the cards your own and use them in whatever ways you see fit. Yeah, so I'll stop rambling. I hope this was inspiring to you, and I hope you will pick up your cards, maybe even pick up a deck you can't bond with, and just do some exercises with it. Just look at the cards, play with them, map out your next book storyline, start your next big project. It's all in the cards. Thank you for watching.